I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're listening to Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the sins of the underworld. We're Ireland's top podcast for 2025, and now we've got a new website. So if you want to learn more about crime and criminals, if you want stories, extras, and podcast subscriber specials, go to www.crimeworld.com.
So further developments this morning, Ken, as the father of Tadhg Farrell was arrested in prison in connection with a prison row, which obviously wouldn't be a major story. Prison rows happen all the time. But obviously the guards are looking into this prison row and seeing if this was a spark that led to the really, really shocking and tragic arson attack that ultimately cost Tadhg and his great-aunt, Mary Holt, their lives. Tell us about what we know about this prison arrest.
Well, obviously two completely innocent people. It's probably one of the most horrendous crimes we've covered in years. So Gardaí made an arrest this morning, and it's Aaron Holt, 27-year-old drug dealer. He's the father of Tadhg, and he's the fifth prisoner to be arrested in the Midlands Prison. It's all Gardaí officially classified this aspect of their investigation as an investigation into assault causing harm. So if we're to rewind a bit before this arson attack happened, not last Saturday, the Saturday before, an inmate aged in his 20s from County Kildare, who would be a rival of Aaron Holt and his associates. This guy from County Kildare was attacked by up to 4 prisoners. The nature of the assault, as far as, you know, we cover prison assaults all the time. Even in the Sunday World, there was a prominent story about a guy suffering a broken jaw last weekend. It was nothing of the sort. Now, the injured party suffered facial injuries. There was 4 involved in it. The prison officers managed to stop it before it got anyway violent. Those 4 prisoners have been subject to P19 discipline.
So the P19 is an internal prison thing where they may have privileges revoked, and it's a formal procedure. But these things don't always go to the Gardaí, would they?
No, and it's actually quite rare because we're not talking about an assault on the higher level. So it through the jail's own intelligence network, it quickly became obvious that the suspicion, and I think maybe before this desperate tragedy ever happened, the suspicion was that even though he was not physically involved in this prison assault, Tadhg's father had ordered the others, who have a vast collection of previous convictions, but again wouldn't be classified as organised criminals, had ordered these individuals to attack his County Kildare rival.
And of course that's a suspicion, and now the guards are obviously investigating it and have arrested him. He obviously hasn't been charged at this point, and you know, we don't know what the level of evidence is. But either way, what we do know is that all of this prison row has become very much the focus of the Garda attention because of what ultimately transpired.
Yeah, and it actually nearly always was from the Sunday of last week. I think on Monday we done a story Monday afternoon, basically focusing in on this prison row. So from that point, from Monday morning actually, and into Tuesday, there was a large Garda presence within the prison, and cells of anyone of interest within this prison row were raided. Some items were taken. The guards haven't been overly saying exactly what they got, but it seems that what they did get, possibly burner phones and so on, may be very significant. Also what they did, with the help of the Irish Prison Service, I think their operational unit, they, as you know, all legitimate phone calls in prison, Niall, are recorded, and they were able to access all these recordings as well and go through them. And it seems ultimately that nothing of hugely evidential value. There had been rumours towards the end of last week that possibly a prison phone call was made on the actual prison system. That seems not to have happened in relation to the aftermath of the prison assault.
So we don't know, obviously, that who ordered this house to be firebombed. Obviously the suspicion, which we'll talk about now, is that it was carried out by very young people. So it would make sense that somebody ordered it from the outside. We don't know if they just were told this and took it upon themselves. But certainly the guards, again, are narrowing in on an organised crime gang based around Kildare, but operating across the Midlands.
Yes, and again, this particular gang became of interest very quickly in the investigation. There's actually family links and so relationship links, a lot of interconnections. The gang in question have been operational for well over 2 decades. And you're right, it's still not known whether it was a classic order, or do it, or was it simply that the criminals whose long-term base would have been in County Kildare, that they took it upon themselves to teach Aaron Holt a lesson. They obviously knew he was never going to be in that house. And we've seen the CCTV. It was extremely reckless what happened. So the suspicion is that the leadership or the main figures in this County Kildare gang became aware of what had happened only hours earlier in the Midlands Prison. And what they did is, it seems they enlisted, we know, well, the suspicion is anyway, because the youngster's gaff was raided on Friday. A 14-year-old boy is a suspect in relation to this, as in being one of the 2 arsonists. So it's thought that basically these teenagers were enlisted to carry out an attack, a revenge attack, a retribution for Aaron Holt's alleged involvement in ordering the earlier prison beating, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And of course, like you can see the CCTV, you see these young-looking guys, they go in, throw in this firebomb, and the house seems to catch fire straight away. From that image, it looks like there's an instant explosion, and we know the extremely tragic consequences of that the loss of a 4-year-old boy, I mean, should shock any country, any society at any time. And obviously then Mary Holt as well, who again, she was laid to rest over the weekend, and you heard that sort of heartfelt, genuine tributes to a woman who's only ever given to her community. I mean, really, really, shocking. Now, like, these firebomb attacks are going on all the time across the country, and young guys, like, obviously you'd have to say they should know better, but are they even getting paid? They're just being told to do this. They might get £100. I mean, it's a terrible loss of life over very little.
Well, if they are getting paid, you can rest assured they're not getting paid big money. And often I'm sure often it is about drug debts as well. You're quite right to say it's happening all over the country. Like even yesterday in Crime World, we did a story about the shooting in Ballymun on Sunday night. It's part of a localised feud there. There's also been a number of petrol bomb attacks, really, that we haven't covered, I suppose, because there wasn't really anybody injured. But that's been going on all year. But that's only just one feud of dozens across the country. So it's a miracle, really, in a way, that these are the first fatalities in relation to this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, if you throw a firebomb into a house, you have to know that it can lead to a loss of life. Now, Aaron Holt, of course, he prison rows occur all the time. Again, they're 10 a penny, aren't they? Like they go on all the time in an enclosed space with people involved in criminality. It's just going to happen. And he has paid a terrible price, the loss of his son. That must be really difficult, no matter what he is in prison for, because of course he wasn't even given bail, was he, for his son's funeral, because of the nature of his offences and also his own history, I suppose.
Yes, this it was an emergency application for compassionate leave. It was made at Mullingar Circuit Court on Thursday, and it was refused by the judge, who heard very strong guard objections. Among them was concerns about the safety of both Holt and the public if he got released. His previous convictions were outlined and were very significant, and he was described as the main player in the drugs trade in Edenderry. And there was a number of other factors brought forward by the guards that led to the judge refusing the application. And it was an unusual situation, Niall, because over the years we would have seen some notorious criminals maybe not being allowed to attend a funeral of their loved ones, but we've seen them attend funeral homes rather, or maybe a house visit, kind of discreetly done in the presence of prison officers. But because of Holt's situation, he's serving a 1-year jail sentence for drugs and assault offences. And he's due to be sentenced after pleading guilty in January to possession of over €30,000 worth of heroin. So he is, as well as serving a sentence, he's on remand. So in this particular case, after the court refused his application, my understanding is he did not approach the Irish Prison Service to in an attempt to get a release for half an hour like that. I think it would have been denied anyway, considering what the Gardaí had outlined in court.
Yeah, they were very strong in their objections. And you're right, regularly prisoners, even people that are behind bars for very, murder and other crimes like that, they can be brought late at night to the funeral home often, and it's closed off, and they're brought in maybe handcuffed even and brought in.
There's a technical issue here though. Many of those guys that we would have, and we have done stories about that in the past, were serving their sentence. Even though he's serving a sentence, he's also technically on remand in relation to the heroin dealing charges, which makes it a kind of a bit of a tricky situation, I think, in terms of officially, can he be granted?
Yeah, what is his status?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Now, over the weekend, there was a number of raids on homes. There's no doubt that both the political class and the guards themselves are really, really determined to solve this murder. Their statements have been really strong, statements from Justice Minister Jim O'Callaghan, Micheál Martin, also the comments on the record by the Gardaí showing really how, and that's not to say any murder is acceptable, but they're really making making it clear that this is going to be pursued and that they are going to, pull no punches in getting it done. So there was a number of raids, and again, we're going back to the focus does seem to be on associates of this criminal gang based in Kildare.
Yes, those raids happened on Friday, and they were directly connected with the arson attack. And a couple of younger relatives of one of the more senior players in that gang, their homes were targets of these raids by armed Gardaí. It was a bells and whistles job. There was no arrest made, and I think it's significant as well. Like Gardaí are saying that this is going to be a slow burner. There were no rush to kind of make making arrests in relation to the assault in the prison, a kind of a closed off place where kind of it's established almost within reason what happened in terms of the assault. But in terms of the outrage, the double murder, it's Gardaí are in no rush. They want to get all the evidence together before, and the mobile phone evidence, I believe, is going to play a massive part in this.
Yeah, and we've seen in all sort of modern investigations that they can actually take time, but one of the things that they have to do would be to harvest CCTV. I mean, that's when these big cases, as soon as they happen, you'll have the guards going door to door really to anybody in the neighbourhood, trying to ask them, do they have just regular CCTV, maybe having to get warrants to seize it, and then they start trying to pierce it together. Now, obviously this is, it's in a town, there might not be as much as there would CCTV as much as there would be in Dublin city centre, but there's all of these things get put together, and I suppose as you said, the mobile phone evidence can take time.
It can. And speaking of CCTV, and we were saying about how strong the Gardaí's public statements have been in relation to double murder. It was kind of unprecedented for CCTV images of the actual arson attack to be released so early by Gardaí. I think it was last Wednesday.
Yeah.
So that's only a number of days. There was some days back in the day that might have featured on Crime Call a year later. I think they've realised, putting that stuff out now is better. It's more useful.
Oh, totally. And even their statements, which are, typically can be very, unemotive, let's put it that way. Like you can see there is an emotion there saying Tadhg should be at home. And that's correct. I mean, it's not, it shouldn't be sort of okay that a child has lost his life in this way.
No, absolutely not. And we could see that in the language used from that very first, from the Sunday, once this got confirmed to be a murder investigation, the language from the Gardaí was very strong. We're calling it a murderous attack and various other things. So, look, they are following a definite line of inquiry. There's no doubt about it. And there will definitely be more arrests in the coming weeks.
So, like, we, obviously on this podcast, we're typically talking about these big gangs, mostly based in Dublin, but a few other pockets around the country. But what you have in rural Ireland in recent years, you have the emergence of these other, criminal organisations. And as you said, they tend to be focused on family ties to an extent, but they can be very dangerous and lucrative business.
Yes. This particular gang, they've been on the go for a very long time. If you want to, the main counties they operate in are Kildare, Offaly, and also Westmeath, where some of the main gangsters within it are now living. They have been involved in murders. There was a Lithuanian chap, he did live in Kinnegad. His body was found in a rural part of County Kildare, and a good while after he was went missing, beaten to death. And there was also it was a complicated one, but it was a double murder. There was a shooting in Kilcock. There was a criminal from Tala, and Andy Barry was one of the victims. Also, another victim who was shot dead that particular night was a Lithuanian criminal. But the belief, Gardaí could never, just like the case of the poor Lithuanian chap who was beaten to death and his body dumped in a field, there's never been any charges. There has been arrests and all right. But in relation to that particular double shooting, Gardaí believed that was actually an elaborate setup.
Yeah.
So it shows, and I think, Niall, that was 2000. It was 2012. That happened over 13 years ago, and that gang were quite established by that particular stage.
And Andy Barry was no easy target. He was a feared gangland criminal in of his own right. Who had been linked by marriage to Troy Jordan.
Yes,
of course, a veteran criminal figure, and he'd been involved in a high level of feuding across parts of Tala, but a very serious operator, and for them to take on somebody like that shows they are serious players, and there is big money to be made now. And part of this story also shows how the drug crime has just become such a big feature in mid-sized towns like Edenderry.
Well, look, isn't it significant the charges that
Aaron Holt is facing,
has pleaded guilty to. That's heroin. Like, it's the most serious. It's the most serious of drug of them all, arguably, and so it just shows the rural Ireland is awash with all this stuff.
Yeah, and
particularly cocaine, as we're always mentioning.
Yeah, and sadly, of course, what follows from drugs is violence. It's almost inevitable because that's how the trade operates. It needs people to enforce debts and enforce discipline, and the only way they can do it is through violence. But look, no doubt, Ken, it's a story that we'll keep coming back to, because the guards really do seem to be determined to bring this to justice.
No doubt. Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Ken.
Cheers.